I feel like I'm which one of these is not like the others. I mean, not only that I don't have a PowerPoint, so I was grateful for John for not having one, but also because I'm neither a skilled practitioner nor running a major system nor an academic, but actually a funder in this community. And so it gives a different sort of perspective to it. But I can't actually give you what the philanthropic perspective is, because there are as many funders in this room who will say we don't have a perspective. We are as idiosyncratic as the children in each school. Let's put it that way. And more so, I feel personally totally inadequate to do any sort of talking to anybody here. It started this morning when I was on the subway, and there was a 4-year-old in his stroller reading a chapter book out loud and correctly, and I thought, and then to follow everybody who spoke here, I'm just quite out of my league. But what I really appreciated about this morning and this whole day was that was a couple of things. In every conversation, even conversations about data and everything else, we still remember that it was about kids and learning, and that was the core of what was talked about. That was the first thing. The second thing was that the academics did a really good job of discussing data in a way that even I could understand. And the third part was that you went into the black box. So it wasn't just this, the data shows this, but what were those elements that we tried to open up that actually indicate why the data would go one way or another. So just to go quickly through what I think I learned today was that we need to measure things. And it's not just to measure things so we measure them, but is so that we can do something about it. And so we understand what that measurement means. And so we're going to measure things like teacher effectiveness, and we learn that kids may really be punished by having bad teachers, and they're going to be punished for long periods of time by having a series of bad teachers. And we can measure student performance, and that we want to understand what those gains mean. And when we're talking about closing the achievement gap, what does that mean versus you could raise the bottom, or you can lower the top. And there's a big difference and implications on what that means. That schools need to use data and need to understand data, and that there's all sorts of training that's going on to try to help schools to do that, and that there are many places that we still want to be able to study, and there's still more room to really understand what's going on. The second thing I felt that I learned was that we just can't wait for all the data to come in, that we need to do things even while we're researching. And we need to change, not for change's sake, but because there are some things that we really must start doing differently. Part of the reforms have begun already. We're looking about organizational changes, and changes like charter schools was used as an example of that. And I would guess that a lot of people are really agnostic around the governance structure of a school. It's not just charters because we think that we need to have a different governance structure. It's about the accountability and the autonomy that charters offer, and that there was a conversation about some of the spillovers of that into the system as a whole, and Chancellor Klein has talked about how he has brought reforms of charters into the larger system. Jim, you talked about the change of the central bureaucracy and the need to make all those changes. And I sort of took notes as, this is a how-to on how to make change. I thought that was extremely helpful about how do you change, what do you do with the people who are currently there, who cannot be part of the change and all of that. We did not talk a lot about, but the underlying this is the use of the word innovation. And I always struggle with this because we all want new and improved, because who wants to be old and dull? But sort of what really are the tools for that innovation? Technology, whether it's the flip camera that has us videotaping teachers and the power of seeing teachers teach, or whether it's really just great, impressive technology as in ARIS or in School of One that can really be game-changing in how teachers are organized, how we really understand the communication of material. And then, of course, the bulk of this was really about teacher effectiveness. And again, how do we understand it? How do we measure it? And in Waiting for Superman, there's a fun graphic about what they call the dance of the lemons. As in every state, there's a different way of doing this, but you rate your teachers satisfactory and you move them to somebody else's school. And so when I first came into ed reform in New York, they used to talk about road scholars. You give them a satisfactory and you put them on the road. And so, but the idea is, and so appreciate what the administration in Albany and what the administration in New York is doing to try to get around that. It's not about moving teachers around and so that we just sort of redistribute poor teaching. It's really about raising the whole level of teaching. I was fascinated about the data of what do you do after first year, because oftentimes you go into charter schools and the first year teacher, after the first year of the school, you just lose 3/4 of the teaching faculty. And it may be because you should be losing 3/4 of the teaching faculty, and maybe because of what's the struggles of a new school. But the good news was that that may not be bad, because you can understand really early on. The better news, I thought, came from John when he started talking about, well, there are things that can make teachers better, and being a fan of Doug Lemov's and that work, he has some interesting ideas of doing that. And finally, I just came to, as I always have, but to really admire the DOE and state ed for really trying to do such very, very hard work. I mean, you're just tackling all the really big issues of Common Core, assessments, curriculum, understanding data, teacher and principal effectiveness, teacher training, evaluation, professional development, and you're trying to do that while navigating a very complicated political system and really moving towards reform. So my last thought was only to thank Ray and the team here for having brought us all together to have such a really interesting morning and discussion of all that. So.